Becky here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today to talk about some of the different ways that you can dehydrate your different goods. Now, I get asked quite a bit, I don't have an electric dehydrator. Can I use my oven? Well, yes, you actually can. In fact, when I first started dehydrating, the very first thing I ever did was deer jerky, and I did it in my oven because I didn't have a dehydrator. And that, I can't remember what I laid it on. I think I just used a regular cookie sheet and laid the marinated pieces on the cookie sheet, stuck it in the oven, and then you set your oven at about 140 to 200 degrees. It's going to depend on what you're dehydrating, going for the lower heat for the most delicate items. And then you crack the door open about 2 inches. So if your door likes to shut automatically, you might need to find a way to prop that door open. So that's going to add added air circulation and allow the moisture to escape up out of the oven itself. And then another thing you can consider doing also is setting up a fan somewhere close to that open door that can blow air across through there to increase circulation, which would also speed up the drying process. Now, in the summer months, especially if you live in a very warm climate, that's probably not going to be ideal because you don't want to be heating up your house anymore than you already have to. Now, it is a low heat, but even then, that can be enough to really add more to the heat that you're already experiencing. Now, we don't have air conditioning here because it's just not really necessary because we get few very warm days, and when we do, they feel pretty warm because we have high humidity. So what I do in the warmer months when I'm running my electric dehydrators, because I only do that during the times of the year that we're getting plenty of sun to keep our battery bank through our solar power charged up, and then I run my dehydrators on there. And electric dehydrators are just one of the methods I use. I'll talk more about that in a bit. But anyway, when it's cooler, like right now, the day that I'm actually shooting this video is April 4th. It might be a month or so by the time you're seeing this. Probably by that point, I'll be moving my dehydrators from inside the house to either out in the greenhouse or out onto the deck. And in any case, it's always plugged into solar power. But on those warm days, I do try to keep that heat outside, and I can have as much as 3 dehydrators running at a time. Having other methods that you can dehydrate, and it doesn't have to be electric. If you live in a very hot and dry climate, you can get away without any kind of electric dehydrator for certain and have your items dry pretty quickly. If you live in a more humid place like us, hanging things to dry like herbs and stuff, I've tried hanging them in the greenhouse. It just is too humid. And you know, where it, even if on rainy days they could continue drying, but they never get dry the way I would like them to in a fast enough period of time. And so that's not the ideal method for us. But for people who live in a dry climate, you can fabricate or buy all kinds of different things that you can dehydrate in. They make some things that are just basically a net all the way around. And if you have a dry place, especially where it can get plenty of airflow, hang that anywhere. Those kind of things are especially good for herbs. I've seen pictures where people made basically a wooden frame and laid some kind of screen across it. If you know, on feet, you know, maybe even recycle some old table legs and then just made a real simple wooden frame, and you can just staple any kind of fabric that's breathable. A natural fabric, cotton would be best for this. A cotton fabric down there, like cotton sheets are very breathable and thin enough, but also strong enough that you can lay all kinds of stuff on there, and it should dehydrate quite well. Just set it out in the sun and you can dehydrate anything doing that. And that just rarely is something that would work for us here, again because of the humidity, but also because we have so few real sunny hot days that things would dry quick enough that way. So that's why I'm reliant in those months when we're not having a fire going on electric dehydrators. Now, if you're interested in electric dehydrators, I have 3 different Nesco dehydrators. One was brand new, and the other 2 I found at garage sales. I think I paid $5 for one, $3 for another, and neither one of them looked like they had been used. So they were pretty much brand new, in perfect shape. So don't forget to look secondhand. If you can't go out garage sailing, look on your Facebook Market, look on eBay. Just make sure you watch it. You be careful. Try to look as locally as you can. No matter where you go online, there are scammers out there, so just be careful. But buying secondhand can be a really great way to find good dehydrators, whether it be Nesco, Excalibur, Cabela's brand. There's all kinds of different brands of electric dehydrators out there that a lot of times people will buy dehydrators, use them once or never use them at all, and realize they have no use for it. Same thing goes for canners and many other things. Now, it might be a little more difficult now that more people are getting into preserving food for long term, but I believe if you keep trying, you can keep finding that. Now, I will go ahead and put a search link down below in the description box for both the Excalibur, if you're interested in that, or the Nesco. It's just going to depend on what you're looking for. A lot of people love the Excalibur. It's a lot more expensive, and you're going to pay even more if you want stainless steel racks to go in those. But a lot of people swear by the Excalibur. It has the fan and the heat from the back, so it doesn't matter where you put your trays. That's going to dry your food fairly evenly. I'm sure the food in the front probably takes a little bit longer than that in the back, so I would assume you'd probably still have to rotate the trays. The Nesco, I like the style of. There's a lot of other brands that make a similar style where you have the stackable trays like I have right here, and sometimes the heat and fan element are on the bottom, sometimes they're on the top. It depends on what style you buy. Mine are all from the top, and so it blows the air downward. And then what I do, I just put my more delicate things on the bottom, farthest away from the heat. So all my different herbs that need a lower heat at the bottom, because by the time the heat gets down here, it's not that hot anymore as it is from the top. And then the top will be things like ground beef that I'm dehydrating, or certain vegetables that need a higher heat to dehydrate. So that's going to be around 125 to 150 degrees tops, and just depending on what it is. Now, you can look all these different temperatures up online. If you buy an electric dehydrator, you should have a booklet that explains what I'm sure you can hear my chickens out there. I got the door open because we're just getting some fresh air going through the house. But anyway, so it's kind of noisy. But anyway, you should have instructions on what different items need to dehydrate at different temperatures. Usually your herbs are going to be lower, 95 to 110 degrees. And if I'm drying only those herbs on, which usually this time of year, the first thing I'm doing are more delicate things like dandelion flowers, nettle leaves, dandelion leaves, whatever's coming in at the time. It's going to be a lot of herb stuff, peppermint and so on. Those are things that I would set it at a lower heat and just pile the thing high. Now, having 3 dehydrators, especially when a lot of things are coming in, is definitely very handy. I can do it so that maybe I'm drying onions or whatever needs a higher heat on one and herbs on another. But the other thing you can do also is you can rotate. You can do, like I said, put the things that need a higher heat on top and the more delicate items on the bottom. But make sure you continue to check your items and rotate. You know, the things that take longer, if they're already on the top, you might be able to run all that stuff at the same time. But if you're having all the same things on all of those trays, you're definitely going to want to check that, because the trays on the top will dry first, and then you'll need to take those off, and then you can go start putting those away into your jars or whatever while you're allowing the other trays to finish drying. So with that in mind, I want to bring up this method. Now, I have a video I did last year just on making these. It was an idea that just kind of came to mind. I had those little inserts, those little mesh screens that you could put inside here to keep smaller items, your various herbs and whatnot, from falling through there. Or even like if I'm drying whole calendula flowers, once they dry, the petals start to fall off and then they'll fall through the screen, even in those little mesh screens. So I came up with this method to not only help me get away from so much plastic exposure to the food while it's drying, but also to make it easier. I can dry soaked grains on here. I can dry my hamburger meat on here. I do have to wash it out with hot water and soap though when I do that. And much more. And rosemary is something that's really tiny. I can dry those, or thyme, and not have any problem, and it makes it very simple. So I'll link to that video that I did on making these down below. You can choose to do them however you want. I cut the hole in the middle to make it easier to just slip over on this kind of tray. You don't really have to do that, but it will also allow more airflow by cutting that hole out, but you don't have to. I don't hem them. I just use old sheets. They're either free or very, very cheap to find at garage sales. I buy old sheets of both cotton and cotton flannel, and they get recycled in so many different ways, because usually you can find a sheet for 50 cents to $1 for a single sheet, or a couple of dollars for a full set of sheets. And they go in skirts, aprons, all kinds of things. So this is just one of the ways that makes life easy. Now I then took this idea and moved on to the wood stove dehydrator that's off grid, so no electricity, and that's what I use through the rest of the year when we don't have a lot of sun to keep our battery bank topped off. But even when we do, if it's cold enough to have a fire, I'm going to dehydrate in there, because I'm putting less wear and tear on my electric item. Now Patrick made that rack out of old bed rails. And then we bought these mesh racks at our local store. Now I haven't been able to find these exact same ones online to link to, but you can find other brands that are similar. This was found in like the sporting goods department in the smoker section, because these were made to go with a smoker. But these are similar to the size of the ones you can find to go with their Excalibur. And anyway, so Patrick built that holder specifically to fit to these mesh rack. So I can put all kinds of stuff on here, but even then, with how small these holes are, still certain items like the calendula, the thyme, and so on, are kind of they're still too small to dry directly on here. So I made a bunch of square ones, some actually rectangular, so they can hang over the sides to prevent dust from the fireplace from getting on the things that are dehydrating. Now, depending on what I'm drying and how warm the fire is, I usually set some things I'll dry on top of the wood stove, like when I'm doing jerkies, chanterelle mushrooms that we can pick wild around here, and certain other things that can handle the higher heat I'll put right on top of the wood stove. But for herbs, I have that set up next to the wood stove for dehydrating. So a lot of people have asked, well, does Patrick make them to sell? Well, he thought about it because so many people asked, but it would just be far too expensive for him to build those, especially when you're looking at 4 trays. These alone are $10 a piece to buy to go with them, plus the amount of time and expense that goes into actually building the heavy duty rack. Now, he initially made that so it would sit right on top of the wood stove, but I actually have 2 of them stacked on top of each other that I use next to the wood stove, so I can dry a lot more that way. So it got me thinking, this is one of the main reasons I am doing this video, is you can actually purchase a whole setup of racks that's for drying or cooling, which is a one-piece thing where you've got your different racks on there and it's all on a stand. The whole thing's stainless steel. And I will link to a couple of different ones down below, but you can do a search too and find all kinds. They have some that are round, some that are rectangular, and they're actually a pretty decent price. You're gonna pay a lot less for something like that than buying one at Patrick's, because on top of that, it would cost a lot of money to ship because it's so heavy with the made out of the old bed rails. It's actually pretty heavy. So that's one way if you're looking for something to use either next to or on top of your wood stove. Those are a couple of ideas right there that you can use. Now, some other ideas that wouldn't cost you any more money or time to put together would be by simply taking some cookie sheets. I would recommend, if you have stoneware cookie sheets, those are going to be the best because they're going to allow a little bit more breathability, and you can set your items right on cookie sheets. And especially if you live in a hot climate, you can put those in your vehicle. Just make sure you crack your windows open so the moisture can escape, and then just set them either on your dash or in the back window or wherever, and let your items dry there. I remember an old video that Starry Hilder had done where she was doing that, and I know several other people have said they have done that same thing where they use their car to dehydrate all kinds of different stuff. And that's one way you can do it that's not going to cost you any more money. You don't have to buy anything if you already have cookie sheets. But I would still recommend even laying a little bit, if you happen to have some old sheets, fabric of any kind that's natural and breathable, you can still lay that down on top of the cookie sheet itself. And I think that would also help speed up the process. Because one thing I found that by using the fabric, which kind of surprised me, I thought it would slow down the drying process, it actually seemed to speed it up. And one possibility I'm thinking why that seems to speed up the process is that the fabric helps to absorb some of the moisture from whatever it is you're putting on there. We all know that sheet fabric, especially if you hang your clothes to dry, your laundry to dry, sheets always dry very quickly, which is wonderful because they're so big and take up so much room. So sheet fabric, because it's already a nice thin fabric, is going to dry very quickly and again hold everything in there. So whatever you do, consider you can use just the sheet, just lay a sheet across any kind of frame, lay your stuff out there right in the sun, and that's another free way you can do it. So basically it's just a matter of being creative and coming up with your own way if you are really trying to save money and also trying to find a way to do it off grid. So you don't, maybe you don't have solar panels like we do, and you're wanting a way where you don't have to depend on the power, or maybe you already are off grid. There are so many different ways. What I recommend, do a search on your browser for homemade dehydrators and then click on images and see how many different pictures you can come up with where people have made their own designs. You know, some people go all out and make a fancy box that they totally enclose with some kind of mesh to keep the bugs out. That's the other thing, is covering your stuff too. If you're in a place you're going to get a lot of bugs on it, you know, and some people just lay it right out there in the open. It's all going to depend on your area, your climate, how much dust and bugs you might have, what's going to work best for you. So if you do that search, you might be able to come up with all kinds of different ideas that are going to work good for you and are easy enough for you to throw together on your own. All right, well, I hope you found this video helpful to give you some ideas of the many different ways you can dehydrate, especially if you don't have an electric dehydrator, don't want to or can't afford to go run out and buy one. Totally get that. Again, don't forget to check secondhand sales. You can sometimes find them for really, really cheap. And please share with us down below any ideas you've come up with, things that have worked best for you for dehydrating your various things, whether it be relying on electricity, but especially if it's not relying on electricity, because a lot of people are looking for that more than anything. So thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.